Welcome back to Stooge Stream. I'm your host, the Stooge, and this is another episode of Is It Worth Playing? This time we're looking at Superman, the arcade game from 1988. We're going to pull it apart, put it back together, and have a look and see, is it worth playing? First off, a little bit of history. Most people would be aware that the Superman legacy in video games isn't a great one. Things like the early microcomputer ports to the ZX Spectrum and BBC Micro of Superman games weren't great, all the way through to the notorious N64 Superman game. Superman64, what a disaster that was. In between, there has been sprinkled a few okay titles like Man of Steel on the original Xbox. Wasn't too bad, wasn't brilliant, but it wasn't bad. It's actually playable and quite fun. It's not Superman 64, in other words. But the first Superman game I ever played was a Superman arcade game, and this is really fun. It's a beat 'em up slash shoot 'em up. It was released by Tatio, and it's based clearly on the Superman property. Being 1988, it was a little bit late for the Superman movies, but it does use the theme from the Superman movies, so it is trying to capitalize on the nostalgia of those first two Richard Donner films. And being in that era of arcade games, of course you know it's going to be some sort of beat 'em up. So the levels take place in three parts. There's 5 levels. You have a side-scrolling, moving left to right, beat 'em up section where you can fly, walk. When you're flying, you have a high punch and a low kick, which makes sense when you're fighting the enemies. Some come at you high, some come at you low. So you need to be able to reach both of those, the high enemies, the low enemies. Some block high, some don't block low, some block low, so on and so on. You also have a shot that you can use when you charge up your punch. So you hold punch button down, charges up, but he can't move while he's flying and charging. And there you go. You have vertical scrolling levels where you're moving from bottom to top. Same sort of scenario though, just punching enemies or kicking enemies high, low, and your charge shot. And then you have side scrolling shoot 'em up levels, a la R-Type or something like that, where you have the charge punch again and you have the I-beam shot instead of kick. All of these end with a boss battle at the end of each sequence, and you're building your way towards beating the evil Emperor Zsasz, who is clearly Brainiac, which is besides the point. It's a lot of fun to play. Mechanically, it works quite well. It is a little bit stiff moving from left to right, but considering the time that it came out, the era of arcade games, it actually works really well. Colorful, bright, really well designed backgrounds. The sprites in this game are really nice. Everything's nice and big, not overly big so it takes up too much real estate on screen, but big enough that you can pretty much tell what everything is just by having one look at it. So Superman, for instance, looks like Superman. It's a 2-player co-op game as well, which is a recommended way of playing the game. Now, the second character, if you're a comic book fan, you'll notice the color scheme looks very much like Captain Marvel, or Shazam as some people call him, which is wrong, it's Captain Marvel. Billy Baxton says Shazam to become Captain Marvel. So that's a nice little treat, but the game really is made to play in cooperative 2-player mode. It is quite difficult in single player. You'll be putting a lot of quarters, or in my case, 20-cent pieces or dollars into the machine to finish it. It's not an easy game to finish, but in saying that, it's a lot of fun, and throwing a second player, it becomes so much better, such a better experience, and so much more fun as well. You have enough abilities to make the game fun. So punching, kicking, flying around. When you fly around, you move quite well, actually. It's just turning, like flicking from enemies from left to right. So when there's an enemy on the right-hand side and the left-hand side, sometimes it just feels a little bit stiff, but that's it. The bosses have like patterns that you can learn over time. So if you face the same boss a couple of times, you'll learn its pattern. You'll learn how to beat the boss without taking too much damage. So it's good in that regards as well. There's replay value there, and every time you play the game, you're going to get better and better at it because you're going to learn how different enemies move, what their attack patterns are, what the boss attack patterns are, how to get through it. That's quite cool as well. There's also power-ups. Well, sort of there's power-ups. So every now and then you can break things on the ground or throw objects at enemies or kill multiple enemies at once and gems will drop. A blue gem will restore Superman's health slightly. A yellow gem will give you a projectile shot, which you don't have to charge up. And a red gem, when you're on the shooting sections, they only appear on the side-scrolling shoot-'em-up sections, will clear all enemies off screen like a bomb that clears everything off screen. The sound design of the game is really good. As I mentioned earlier, throughout the game, the Superman theme from the 1980s Richard Donner original Superman films 1 and 2, well, the Donner cut of 2, I should say, and number 1 being the best of them, and that was a Donner film, plays throughout the first 4 levels of the game. The last level has original compositions, which are quite interesting and unique, and sound pretty cool as well, and put you in the mood of a boss battle. The enemies can rush you at times. So when you get to level 4, level 5, of course, it ramps up in difficulty and you do have a lot of enemies on screen rushing you all at once. This is when having a second player comes in. You really need 2 players to help clear out the screen without getting rushed and killed every single time. But even playing solo, as long as you've got a few extra credits that you can spend, you'll get through. The design of the actual game itself all blends together really well. When you add in the sound that pulls you in with that iconic Superman theme, great, beautiful, bright sprites, really fluid mechanics other than that one thing of turning left to right, which you get used to, and when you actually play the game, kind of works for the character. Superman is a big, bulking, stiff dude, so you know, it kind of works anyway. It's just one annoyance I had, but you know, later games, like later beat 'em ups, things like Final Fight, you can move so quickly, but that was much later in the piece. This is 1988, so you've got to keep that in mind as well. And also, this game just wipes completely the bad taste in your mouth from Superman64. Knowing that there's good Superman games out there, especially this arcade game, Man of Steel, like I mentioned on Xbox, isn't bad. It's actually quite fun. It's pretty much just a beat 'em up with Superman in it. And kind of open world-ish. It's not too bad. You've got things like Injustice, which is a great beat 'em up based off the Mortal Kombat engines made by NetherRealms that feature Superman. So there is options out there for the Superman fans to play a decent Superman game. And if you're looking for a new superhero game or a beat 'em up you want to play, or you're just into arcade classics, this is definitely one that you should put on the list. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed. If you did, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Welcome to Stooge Stream, and you'll see another minute or 2 of gameplay here, just so you can enjoy it without me talking over it. Thanks so much.